Hello, everybody out there, and welcome to another episode of the Talk That Talk Show with me, Barry Holmes. And here we are for another episode. I'm so excited to be here with you guys for another episode, giving you guys everything that's happened over the course of this week. I think one of the biggest things that I wanted to start out with for sure was the fact that I was coming back from injury. And at first, I was a little bit skeptical about how I would be feeling. And realistically, it's a little bit nervous at first when you're coming back because you want to put your best foot forward, but at the same time, it's just difficult at times because we know up in our mind up top that we might be there, 100% there, but then in being out in competition, sometimes it's just, we don't get the results that we want. And that's why I was super happy to have, the support of my friends and family and my team members. On our Facebook live stream, we got Tariq Johnson and Tyree Holmes. Big shout out to them. And, there's plenty of times where, TK said I had my hands in my pockets because I was a little bit upset. But that's what having teammates is all about. And I think that through talking to some of my teammates from coming back and not exactly getting, the response that I was looking for from the lanes, to be able to still have the support of like Angie, TK, Tori, Tyree, Pops, everyone out there and supporting me, that's what made all the biggest difference for me. And that's why, even though I didn't exactly put out my best scores or the scores that I exactly wanted, to have their support and still believe in me and still want to come out and bowl with me, that makes all the difference. So, I think that moving forward, I might try and press just a little bit less because I know we all want to, succeed. But when you're coming back from injury at times, you got to make sure that you give yourself a little bit of grace. And I think that, in seeing where my litmus is, from these first three sets in league, I think it's giving me a better understanding for what I can do to, get my timing right, get my tempo back. And, big shout out to Travis for, coming up to me and, putting me in the lineup because, one of the biggest things that you can do to get right is, trial by fire. So, I think that I'm taking all the steps right to come back off injury and be as productive as possible. And, at times, change takes a little bit of time. So, for all my teammates out there that's seeing me, I'm excited to come back and rejoin with you guys. And, this is not our ceiling. I think that, once we all hit stride in all of our Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday night leagues, it's going to be devastating. And I think that part of the reason that our motivation also comes is the fact that, we have a lot of people, through social media, through, various pages that have kind of throwing some shade out there and saying, hey, these guys are getting a lot of sticks. Their averages are going to give them a reality check at some point. And I think that, me and TK had talked about this earlier, the fact that, with him being a Division I athlete, me playing a sport outside of bowling, when you kind of poke the bear and give, us that type of bulletin board material, we're the type to be able to flip that and flip it to motivate us and give us positive results. And, I saw something where a guy that we were bowling against, there's this thing called Cellicam. And pretty much if you see any unusual spares or splits or anything like that, you post them on the Facebook page and we all have a good laugh about it. But, in this instance on Thursday night, it seemed like the guy was really targeting my boy TK. And, TK didn't take that too kindly. And, I showed him straight up. I'm like, yo, this is what they saying about you, bro. And he was able to take that and flip it to where he was unstoppable after that point. I think one of the things he said to me is like, yo, I wish you never showed me that. And he looked like someone that was supremely motivated. So I think that, when it comes down to competition and it comes down to, taking the next step, there's not always going to be people that are rooting for you or that want to see you succeed. And that's why, you can't let that affect you, and you have to stay the course and continue to work the path and put the work in. And that's why, someone like TK is getting the flack and the attention from people on social media, because he's exponentially getting better. And I think that when people see people getting better at a fast rate, or faster than some of the other people that they bowl with for years, people feel threatened, man. And, I think that people that are threatened act in, a bunch of ways. But either they take the, coward's route and try and clown people through words, or you have the Kobe Mamba mentality type people that, take that, process what's going on, and go back to the lab. One of the biggest things Dad always tells us is, after a tough, set, or, you're not feeling your best, go back to the lab. Let's get it shaken. So, I think that to see that and be a part of that, and to see someone like TK who's just starting in the game but was able to take something where someone was trying to take him out of his game and ridicule him, and he was able to flip that into a positive, to where we stuck out a huge win in Majestic, to where we're, continuously moving up that ladder. So, trying to get that rematch back. So I'm just happy to be back. I'm happy to continue to learn lessons through bowling. I think that's the one thing that I miss the most outside of just rolling the ball itself, is just the various lessons that I learned, through the game. And then also one of the things that I definitely looked forward to is trying different spots out. I got to see my boy Dennis Ward, big shout out to him, over at Hal Lanes, and I never bowl over there. But it's the fact that, taking advantage of opportunities that come your way and building that tool belt, so that when it comes time to, get to work, I have the tools to do the job. And, that's what I think, comes from coming back off injury, is just putting yourself in positions to add to the tool belt to get back to where you were supposed to be. We got Brian Bloom, who says, "What up, B? It was great to see you. And man, you are spitting facts." I appreciate that, bro, Brian, because, one of the things that I looked forward to the most when we were at Woodbridge, Brian, was going up against your team on Thursday nights, because at the end of the day, it was the competition of pushing each other to a place and, getting those battles where, every pin counted, where, you miss a shot and you feel it. And I think that when you go in practice and you do these things, it's very hard to simulate those situations. And, from being in those situations with the right people, that's where you see people succeed and take the next step. I've seen someone like Brian Bloom, his brother JD, who, started out, just learning, and now he's excelling. And, it just speaks to what comes when you put the work in. You know what I'm saying? When you put the work in, when it comes down to it, you can put your best foot forward. One of the biggest reasons, and this is the last thing I'll say about Thursday night, but one of the biggest reasons why we were so excited and happy for the win that we had on Thursday was because, in most instances, teams will give you the game in some sort. They will just be like, all right, here's a missed shot. All right, it's over. And then they kind of give you the game, or they crap out a little bit. In this instance that we had on Thursday, it went up until the very last shot. And it took an entire team effort of all of us getting at least one strike in the 10th to go and secure the win for not only that game, but to take overall Wood. But my point is that the other team that we went up against did not give us that game. We had to go take it from them. So that's why I think, when it comes down to it, and when it comes down to team sports, and we're not just talking about bowling here, the best teams are not always the teams that lead off the rip. They're not always the teams that are coming out undefeated like the Patriots back when they had Randy Moss and Tom Brady. And you saw what happened. There's only been one undefeated NFL team, and that's the Miami Dolphins, right? And it's hard because when you get to that certain level, everybody's trying to knock you off. Everybody's trying to figure out how to beat you. And it's very difficult to continuously get yourself up to perform not just past your capabilities, but beyond your capabilities to get the dub. And, I think that from continuously putting ourselves in these tough situations or going into situations where if you don't strike, you lose, it only helps to build character, and it only helps to build your game and to build the teammates around you, because at the end of the day, you're only as good as your weakest player. And right now, coming back from injury, I am the weakest right now, but I promise you, give me a week or two and we're going to change the narrative on that one. But I think the biggest thing that has happened in sports that we really need to talk about is Dame Lillard going to the Milwaukee Bucks. I tell you what, a lot of people are, wondering why he didn't go to Miami, what kind of transpired to make this happen. But for me, what this trade kind of signifies is that we constantly are hearing that the NBA is a players' league. The NBA is a players' league. They're the ones that are driving the initiatives on things that happen in the offseason, or, coaches. We've had times where you saw KD run Steve Nash out, a guy who he recruited to come in. So a lot of people say that the NBA is a players' league, but when you look at the trade that just transpired, right, we saw Dame Lillard say for months, all summer, all I want to do is have me go to the Miami Heat. That's what Dame Lillard saw. But what we saw was the front office from the Bucks really took control of what this happened, right? So they were the ones to really come to Miami and put together a deal. I mean, Drew is beloved in Milwaukee and was one of the bestest of friends of Giannis Antetokounmpo. So much that Giannis, being the face of their franchise, they did not even consult with him to see if they wanted to trade Drew Holiday for Dame Lillard. And I think that this all is a microcosm of the fact that maybe the NBA isn't the players' league that we think it is. Maybe these owners are trying to take a little bit back and trying to, persuade the narrative. Someone like a Kyrie Irving who said all of his desired landing places, and the Nets shipped him to Dallas. So, I think that, again, as we start to see the trickle-down effect of these players that force their way out of situations, I think that we're going to start to see less and less of players landing in their desired locations. Honestly, it might even be in their best interest not to tell people where their initial landing spots are. I mean, you got to look at someone like a James Harden, who was, in a way, kind of skipped around and bounced around from team to team and really just hasn't kind of found that true home, that true niche that where is him. This is where I stay. I can put 10 toes down. At the same time, you have someone like James Harden who's constantly asking for trades, not willing to go through the process to build a team up, right? And now, again, with the Philadelphia 76ers, we're seeing the same thing where he's requesting a trade. And at this point, when you're constantly asking for trades 3 and 4 and 5 times, what leverage do you have? And if this is supposed to be a players' league where players hold all of the leverage, then the players need to do a better job of making good decisions on what contracts that they do want to go into. A lot of times these players are looking at the dollar signs and thinking, hey, like a Bradley Beal who wants to sign that max contract to go to the Wizards, but really doesn't want to put forth the years that it takes to build the Washington Wizards to be a playoff contender. So at the end of the day, is this truly a players' league? I don't know, because at the end of the day, the teams do have the ultimate say, no matter where you choose that you want to go to. And then Ish says, as a Heat fan, I'm glad we didn't do the trade. We would have had to give up so much. And it's true, because when you come down to it, the Heat were in a position where they need all of those key role players. The reason why they got to that point is because everybody accepted their role and knew what it was and what it would take sacrifice-wise and production-wise to get to the NBA Finals. And when you have to trade those key cogs, those key pieces, after you've already lost people to free agency, then getting back to the NBA Finals seems like a much farther distance, right? So I think we're really just going to have to see what transpires when we talk about this trade with Dame Lillard and Drew Holiday going from the Bucks. It's going to be some. This will not be the only trade that happens, and I promise you that, because I think that, with teams starting to try and build these super teams, like the pattern that we've started to see, you're going to start to see a little bit more teams get desperate, and maybe we see a little bit more sparks from there. But I think another thing that is huge that we have to talk about, and something that is really a part of our everyday culture, what it seems like, but really what we've seen is that the betting culture, or the culture of betting, has become more mainstream than it ever has. I remember going on ESPN and just going to watch the little ticker at the bottom and see, who won, what games won. But now you're starting to see on the ticker in the bottom, even beforehand, you start to see the money line spread. You start to see the point spread, the over-unders for these games. And again, it's more mainstream than ever, and it's like you're encouraging us to, bet on things and to put a little bit more on it. And what I think here has happened is that, with things being more mainstream with betting, with it being more accessible with apps like FanDuel, MGM, BetMGM, we could go on and on, DraftKings, with all of these apps being accessible to people to where you can make hundreds of dollars while sitting on your toilet, it's very, very appealing for a lot of people. And what I'll say is that this story right here showcases the human side of what other players have to deal with. And what we have here is that in the NFL, we've had a stricter ban be put on NFL players for betting. Now, I have to admit, I know that betting, has been a scandal for players through multiple different sports. And if you don't know, look up Pete Rose. But there's always been this stigma around athletes betting on sports, because at the end of the day, they're the ones performing, and they're the ones that are making pretty much the lines either hit or miss. So you can see where there's that little bit of apprehension if we allow these athletes to bet. But I think that the thing that's most interesting here is that, in a way, wouldn't you want someone to bet on themselves, right? Like, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to ball. We do it all the time at the bowling alley. But in the NFL, when you bet on yourself, that is what holds the highest penalty. If you bet on yourself and you are found, to be guilty of this, you will serve a 2-year suspension. And then if you're caught betting on a different NFL team that you're not on, you get a 1-year suspension. And here's the thing that puzzled me a little bit, but I kind of understand it to a degree. If you are caught betting on non-sports, like non-NFL, so say you're betting on the NBA or MLB or something like that, but you're on a facility, like a team facility. Say I'm the New York Giants. I'm on the Giants. And I'm on that practice facility. Say I'm just looking at the lines in the locker room, just chilling. If you place that bet, you will get either a 2-game suspension for the first, and then a 6-game suspension for the second. And this also extends to player travel as well too. So if you're on the plane home and you're a little bit bored and you're like, maybe I'll put a little $20 on the Rockies. Let me watch that on my flight home. That can cost you multiple games suspension in the NFL. And I get what they're saying, because realistically, if we're on the clock at the school, they're probably not encouraging us to place bets on the Monday Night Football game that's happening in school, right? They're probably not encouraging that. While you have a cook who's in the back at Fridays, they're probably not encouraging this man to bet on the New York Knicks if he's got to put 2 appetizers out there too. So I understand, whereas the NFL might not want, their players while they're on NFL time to bet on other sports. I can understand that to a degree, right? But when you in a way, put these ramifications and these limitations on the betting itself with players, it kind of really just creates that separation and almost encourages to us that maybe these players are fixing things, and maybe there are the little strings that are being pulled. Me and TK say all the time how ridiculous it looks where you have a woman in Alyssa Thomas, who the line might be 8.5 for rebounds, and she's been boarding all game, but all of a sudden she's standing at the three-point line. There are some things that happen where you're just like, I don't know, maybe it's a little fixed. And I can see where they're kind of discouraging these athletes, specifically in the NFL, from betting. But I think that, we kind of have to, in a way, it really just represents the bigger picture, I guess, what we can talk about here. The biggest picture of betting itself is so mainstream that athletes and these NFL players can't wait until they get home. They can't have their wife put the bet in for them. They can't have someone else just be like, hey, take this. It's almost that rush that you get, like when me and TK, when we put in a parlay and you hit for over $300 off $10, that is a rush. I did that, right? So for these NFL players who are making millions and millions of dollars, the rush of scoring a touchdown alone is not enough for them. How crazy is that? We get that rush because, hey, we're not out there playing. That's the closest we can get. I knew that the Packers weren't going to cover the first half spread, and that was enough for me. But for those players out there, those NFL players, some of them, just playing the game is not enough. And I think that that's the reality that we are facing right now, with the NFL feeling the need to heighten their ramifications and the consequences for these athletes betting. So, again, it's one of those touchy subjects because it's something that with betting, it's not going to see us be a decline. You're starting to see more and more partnerships from people, whereas, betting is more and more mainstream. So there's going to come a point in time where I truly believe that athletes and maybe even the NFL, where these kind of rules will kind of be put to the side and it will be allowed, because there was a time where the NFL did have a ban on marijuana. We saw it with Josh Gordon. But then later down the line, we saw things get lifted when, some things were worked out. So, I see this right now being as a solution just for right now. But if you truly want to stop athletes from betting and doing the things like that, there's much bigger things that you have to kind of tackle as far as us putting it out there, the mainstream of betting, because, hey, I have to say, it can be addictive if it is not done responsibly. And we see that enough even with these NFL players. But I think another thing that's huge that we have to talk about, and I hate to keep talking about the NFL players, but something that we really should talk about, and that kind of, in a way, we've kind of pushed, or it seems to get pushed under the rug, is Chandler Jones. Now, Chandler Jones from the Raiders, I don't know what's going on, but, what we've seen from him is just a slew of just social media posts that don't make sense. And I think we see this all the time with some of our friends that you may see on Facebook from high school, or some of the people that you may know from other places. But, to see an athlete who's making millions of dollars kind of talk their way out of being in the league potentially forever, and it also it shows very striking similarities from Antonio Brown and the way he's conducted himself, and he just really hasn't seemed to be himself ever since that one hit against the Bengals, where he was coming across the middle and almost got decleated. I think that Chandler Jones, and the red flaggish types posts that he's been making, it just represents the bigger issue of these football players dealing with CTE or any type of head injuries. And we've seen Junior Seau was one of the very first people that was tested, and we found out to have CTE. And we've seen the research has still been put out there, but there's still so much more research that we need to do to ensure that these NFL players get the maximum care that they deserve. I mean, thinking about it this way, you look at some of these multi-million dollar players. And for you to then forfeit, those millions of dollars because of mental illness, mental health, that's why it's just so important to, keep the right people around you. You got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, making sure that you're getting enough rest, doing the things that you do, staying current with your doctor's visits, everything like that, because knowledge is power. And sometimes people would rather not get the confirmation of what they already know may be occurring, because that truth of what could potentially be true could be very nerve-wracking to people. Do you think that Chandler Jones is going to go straight out and say, I have a mental illness, I am suffering? It takes an immense amount of vulnerability from people to accept that and to understand that they need help. And sometimes it takes someone else outside of ourselves to say, hey man, you don't look too good. Maybe you need to get some help. And unfortunately, what we've seen is that people continue to make a mockery of Chandler Jones and the alarming things that he's saying, instead of trying to see what's going on with this guy. Does he need help? What kind of help can we give this man? Because I think at the end of the day, we equate touchdowns and championships to success. But do you know how hard it is to get through a day? Some people can't get through the day and they choose to take the route of suicide. And it's not a good feeling, man, to see people, take their own lives because of things that could have easily been fixed. But in their mind, it seems so unfixable, right? So I just think that, when you look at Chandler Jones, no longer do I see an intimidating force, someone that can absolutely dominate a football game. I look at someone that is lost right now and that truly needs help. And, instead of dragging this brother down and continuing to say just how, disgusting the things that he is saying, what is the NFL doing to try and get this guy some help? We've already seen the Raiders are, saying, hey, go get your help, do what you need to do. We're disassociating ourselves. What happened to the people like, I think TK had sent me an article not too long ago where some player on the Dodgers was suffering from mental illness, and they paid to make sure he could be okay so he could live his life beyond wearing a Dodgers jersey. And I think that, that support from franchises is just not what you see from the NFL. Look at the running back situations to where you have the backbone of your team and franchise owners and GMs don't want to pay these people. It just speaks, the Chandler Jones issue, and, we can talk about other issues with the running backs, but it just shows just how expendable players are in the NFL. We talk about the NBA being a players' league. Can you imagine if LeBron James had a mental illness and if the Lakers just said, go deal with it, we wish you the best? We would have an uproar, right? So I just wish that, NFL players just weren't viewed as expendable as these franchises do view them. And, my heart does go out to Chandler Jones because, right now it doesn't look good for the brother. But one thing that we do have to talk about as well, I want to give a big shout out to my boy Eli, because we're going over his crib Saturday for this fight, Jermell Charlo versus Canelo Alvarez. If you're a boxing fan, one may say that we have kind of, in a way, are we re-entering a golden age of boxing? I felt like, there was so much time in between major premier fights. The fighters in divisions were very scarce. The competition wasn't as close. And what we've seen is that the boxers within each division have kind of stepped up to make some premier fights to where it seems like boxing might really be competing with the UFC in a way. Now, I know it's never going to be as big as UFC has kind of popularized itself because they force these guys to fight. So when you see someone like a Canelo Alvarez who gets a Jermell Charlo to move 14 pounds up in weight to give him the biggest opportunity of his career, that's the type of shit that I want to see in boxing. And I think that's what's going to start to get people to pay the pay-per-views to watch these matches, is if we start to get more of these fighters to be active. You know, someone like Canelo fighting 3-4 times a year. You know, someone like Terrence Crawford, who we waited years to see fight. You know, trying to see him get more active. You know, that is what's going to continue to push the sport of boxing in the right way and push us towards the golden age of boxing that we want to see. Now, if you want to ask me who I think is going to win out of those two, I would put my money on Canelo Alvarez, because I'll tell you this. It is very hard to navigate weight classes. And Canelo's just chilling up here in his 167, I think, 167 and a half? Yeah, 167.4 pounds. You know, my boy Canelo's chilling up here. He's been doing this for a while. My boy Charlo has to go up in weight. And we saw how long, I know UFC is different, but it took John Jones that 3-4 solid years to get his weight up so that when he came back, he was ready to get that heavyweight crown. You know, I think that someone like an Israel Adesanya, we saw it in UFC, when he tried to go up in weight to fight Jan Blachowicz, it wasn't as easy as he thought, right? So in that same sense, in the sport of fighting, it is very hard to move up and move down in weight classes. And that's why you see a lot of guys, when they struggle in these weight classes, they try, and it takes them a little bit of time to find out where do they fall. And what we've seen from Canelo is he understands where he is good at, and he's able to make these key marquee fights. And I'm really excited to see Jermell Charlo go up against Canelo Alvarez. I think Canelo, you know, is more seasoned. I think he's fought tougher competition. And, you know, nobody can underestimate the heart of a Mexican fighter. And I think that Canelo Alvarez has the weight of Mexico on his shoulders when he goes out to Las Vegas to go and try and fight Jermell Charlo. But I'll be there. You know, I'll be there to watch from my phone if I'm streaming it. It's going to be a great fight. But if you ask me, put your money on Canelo Alvarez. But I would not be surprised if this fight went the distance. You know, I think that what we saw from Canelo is that even though he does have the power, he's shown a little bit of vulnerability to be touched up. Maybe it's him getting up with age a little bit, but I do see, I see Canelo not as impenetrable, but I see him as someone that can outlast and outduel a Jermell Charlo. Travis says you better rest up for tomorrow. Quack Attack. Big shout out to my boy Travis Ola for getting me in that lineup at X League. I'm excited to wear the jersey with you. And I think, you know, one of the things that Travis had said when we were in the group chat, and I think it kind of speaks to what we talked about earlier on in the podcast, is that, you know, at times, you know, we may try and overthink certain things. You know, we had someone in the chat that was like, oh, we heard this place is wet, dry, blah, blah, blah. And at the end of the day, if you have the confidence, if you believe in yourself, and you trust the work that you've put in, you can do anything. You know, I've seen someone like an Eric Turner go to various places in different alleys and have success just because he believed in himself. You know, never underestimate the power of belief. And going into tomorrow, Travis, even though, you know, I've only had a week to get back and reacclimated to, you know, be the elite bowler that I know I can be, I still believe in myself. And I think that's why you always have encouraged me and wanted to get me in that lineup, because of that belief, and that belief that I can put in other people as well. I think when it came down to the 10th frame on Thursday, I went to TK, I went to Pops, I went to Tyree, Tor. I said, how bad do you guys want this? You know, how bad do you want it? Do we want to win this? Like, do we want to just give it to them? Or are we going to fight for it? So when you got Barry Buckets on your team, and you know I put that jersey on, and when you see me put my walk in, put my fucking theme music on, and let's rock. You know what I'm saying? And on that note, I love you all. Thank you guys so much. This is the Talk That Talk show.
Talk that talk!
Every single week, you know, I pride myself on being the most consistent and vulnerable podcaster that I can be, and just share with you guys some time, man. Most times people on a Friday night can do anything that they want in the world, This is their time where maybe you go through a long work week and you want to enjoy yourself. And I truly enjoy myself on Friday nights coming in here and spending a little bit of time with you guys. Whether it's my boy Elvin, who comes here on Instagram Live, whether it's Eric, Aaron Elizabeth, TK, Dale Hayward, Howard, he's always on here, Vince Galata. People love this show, and I think it's the fact that we just continue to be ourselves and just try to give you guys 100% vulnerability, man. I could sit here and just regurgitate to you information from ESPN and from CBS Sports, but that shit would be boring. That would be classwork. We did all that stuff before. But I think when we can, take certain themes and expand on them and think about the bigger picture and what those things represent to create the butterfly effect, it's crazy. And this is the last thing that I'll talk about before I get off the air. But I was in English class. I was pretty much substituting with this teacher, Miss Christ. Big shout out to her. And she was teaching this story called The Sound of Thunder. And long story short, it's these guys, they're hunters. They go back in this time machine to go back in time to hunt this animal that they're big hunting or whatever. And all they want people to do is stay on the path. And what does this one guy do? He gets off the path and he kills a butterfly. And when he came back, everything in the world that he had before, it was all gone, right? Everything was different. Everything was changed because of that one little change that he made in the past, right? So I think when we think about the butterfly effect and we think about it in a realistic way, one little thing that you can do, whether it's a little tweak in bowling, whether it's a little tweak in your schedule to fit certain things in, whether it's a little tweak in communication in the relationships that you have, one little thing can have a big, major impact, and it's just your choice whether that impact is positive or if it's negative. So I just want to say to you guys, just be conscious of the decisions that you're making, and just be cognizant of who you are as a person, because if you stick true to your core values, 9 times out of 10 you'll make the right decision. And on that note, I love you all. I'll see you guys next week. Continue supporting Talk That Talk Show, whether we're on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, you name it. We're on all streaming platforms. Check us out at TalkThatTalkShow.com. Stay updated on everything. I love you all, and I will see you all next week.